Good afternoon, everyone. Carasoft Technology would like to welcome you to our ServiceNow Federal Tech Talk, CMDB, or Asset Management. Which one first, a debate or a foregone conclusion? Joining us today from ServiceNow, we have Arun Iyer and Marcel Shaw. Before we get started, I'm going to launch a quick poll for you all. If you wouldn't mind submitting your responses while I run through a few housekeeping items, that would be greatly appreciated. You all should be able to see that up on your screen now. And I'll go ahead and get started with the housekeeping items. So please note that all lines have been muted to reduce any kind of background noise during the presentation. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the Q&A pod on the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to answer by the end of the presentation or follow up with you offline. This webinar is being recorded and a copy will be emailed to you. Just to tell you a little bit about Carasoft, we are a trusted government IT solutions provider supporting public sector organizations across federal, state, and local government agencies, including education and healthcare markets. We'll give a couple more seconds on this poll, and then I'll go ahead and hand the floor over to our speakers for today.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you all for joining us on this afternoon and, taking your time away from your busy schedules to engage with us on this discussion. So my name is Arun Kumar Iyer, Arun for short, and I am a field CTO and a principal executive architect. Forget the titles. What I really do is I try to help customers with value realization on the platform. And that's where we are, in this debate that we're talking about. I've been in ServiceNow for 2 years and 4 months, almost to the date. But I've been in the ServiceNow ecosystem for more than 11 years. I started on Berlin, and I've been an implementation partner, an instructor, a customer, facing a lot of the challenges that you are facing with the platform. And now in my role, I do executive engagements, I do vision alignment, I do transformation blueprints and architecture design. But enough about me. Let's see what my co-presenter and my colleague and friend Marcel has to offer.
Hi, I'm Marcel Shaw. I'm an advisory solution consultant, and I work with Arun here at ServiceNow. And I have also been at ServiceNow for 2 years and 4 months. And I've been around service management for a long time. I started working on a help desk 29 years ago, so I'm dating myself there. A little over 10 years ago, I started blogging at marcelshaw.com about service management and asset management. And I've written for several magazines and everything. And this is one of the topics that I'm passionate about.
So, when Marcel said blogging, I kind of immediately triggered something in my head, but I don't want to go any further without making our legal department happy. This is our safe harbor statement, which says that a lot of things that we talk about here are sometimes our own opinions and things that we are stating forward-looking, and do not base your purchasing decisions on what we're talking about here, and do your due diligence. And that's what this particular slide says. But I do want to kind of bring about the triggering thought that Marcel got me into. He's a blogger. And, he was writing a blog about CMDB or asset first. And we were discussing, and I was reviewing his article, and we got into a agreement of disagreement, so to say, because he had an opinion and I had an opinion. And we said, if you and I are having this dilemma on which one first, then quite likely our customers are also having the same one. And a lot of times, all of this is not relevant until you put a certain context to it. And the context is what we're talking about today in this slide, right? We're talking about you have limited funding, you have limited availability of resources, and then there are these operational goals, and then there's a cost avoidance, and then security. All of these things are placing a certain frame of reference within which you have to make certain choices. And how do we navigate through some of these things? And why do we want to make these choices? The reason we want to make these choices is we have, a lot of, process inefficiencies, or we have a lack of cost visibility. And we're always reacting to things. And a lot of our processes are manual. So when we look at these kind of challenges, they're saying, how do we make those choices? How do we make the decision between what is operationally important to keep our business running and what is the cost challenge? Because remember, we are going to go back into that budget cycle and ask for money, and we are going to have to fund these programs. So that's where this whole thing came about. And that's where we said, let's share this with our audience, right? And I'm going to let Marcel talk about this.
Yeah, Arun. So, when you bring in assets into an organization and into an agency, there's a couple of different perspectives that are, there's a couple of different perspectives that we use to look at those assets. We look at it from a cost, risk, and value, and we also look at the assets from an operational perspective. The cost, risk, and value, we're looking at things like, are we utilizing the asset? What contracts associated with it? Are there any pending renewals or upgrades? Things like that. From an operational perspective, we are looking at things like, is the asset running right now? What is the asset providing as far as services? What other infrastructure works with a particular asset? And these are also generally two different groups of people that are looking at the assets from the operational perspective and from the cost, risk, and value. One of them is more financial, one of them is operational.
Yeah, so I'm going to do one thing that, just so that we do a quick check with our audience. Is this something that you're facing? From the polls I saw, there was a strong leaning towards one side versus the other. And I'm not going to reveal that yet, but does this make sense? And is this why you're here? Quick check on the chat there. And Heather, if you can assist and let us know what people are saying.
Yeah, so Arun, let's talk about what is IT asset management just a little bit more. So when you think about it, it's a focus from the finance side, right? And that will typically include lifecycle management, inventory management, and license management. The assets are actually owned by the organization, and the benefits that you're going to get from IT asset management come in the form of cost control. So if you move on to the next slide there, cost control, you get risk management and the strategic decision making. Now, I once went into a department store with a debit card, Arun, and I thought I had a certain amount in my bank, and bought some clothes, and guess what I did? I overdrew that card. When a lot of organizations make a purchase of their assets, a lot of times they do it blindly. They don't really know what they have. So when you have an asset management system in place, you're actually able to make a better educated decision because you know what you have. It's kind of like knowing what was in my bank account before I went into that department store. Another thing about asset management, which is really key, is there's multiple stories that I've seen out there about what happens when an asset goes missing. For example, people's social security numbers, and I don't want to name any organization, but a lot of the security breaches we've seen in the past are really from assets that aren't properly tracked or assets that have gone missing. You think about this, during COVID, a lot of people took assets home. Their laptops, they probably maybe multiple laptops, and they got refreshes while they were at home. What happened to those other assets? Do we know where they are? What's on those assets? And what happens if we have to report that missing? That can be a big embarrassment to a federal agency, and it can also, cause an agency to have to spend a lot of money to rectify that.
Yeah, so I do agree with you on the whole asset management perspective, but let me kind of recant a story of something that I was associated with, and in the context of the configuration management database. But before I go there, I said, what is a configuration management database, right? Anything that is important to your organization operationally that you want to track, manage, and monitor changes to is going to be an infrastructure item in your infrastructure that you want to know about, that you want to track, that you want to manage. And the reason I kind of say this is because I work with a lot of customers, and the questions that I ask the customer to assess their maturity is, I say, when something goes down, when something happens in your organization, do you consult your configuration management database? And based on that answer, I can assess what is the maturity of their configuration management database. And why do I say that? I'm not trying to be difficult or trying to be hard-nosed about it, but practically being in a situation where I have seen where there was a compromise in an organization and the systems were compromised and we did not have a mature configuration management database. What happened was there were the network folks who had a set of spreadsheets and they had the latest information and everything that was happening in the network. We had the applications teams who had all the information about the applications. We had the database teams who had everything about the database. But guess what? It was not connected. It was not linked. There were no dependencies. And we spent a lot of time, and I'm talking about days and weeks, trying to get that information on which system to bring up first, what was more important to the organization. So that's where the CMDB became really core and central to this whole discussion, and saying, let's track all the CIs, let's manage the dependencies, let's look at what changes are happening in the organization. Because you know what, a CMDB, and you have an opinion about this, Marcel, I'm going to let you.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I want to ask you a question here, Arun. You fly. Have you ever sat at the gate at an airport and they said, we're going to have an equipment change?
Oh, yeah, sure.
And they're changing out the plane typically, right? That flight number that we are is associated with that plane, but they never change the flight number, do they? So they must be tracking two things here. They're tracking the airplane, that has its own number, and then the flight actually represents a service. So if you take a look at your example here with the email server, there are two ways we could look at an email server. What is that? How is that email server providing us email service? I mean, there's software, there's a database, there's routers attached to it. That's an operational view of it. But there's also the actual server itself, the physical server. What license is that associated with? Who owns that? Is it available? Is it assigned? Of course, it's assigned into the configuration here. So we're able to do, if we had to do a change management procedure to change out that server, the actual service may not need to change because the configuration item itself is representing a service.
Yeah, so Marcel, I think you kind of validated that point, saying what we present to the business and what we have as infrastructure are need to be associated, need to be linked, right? And when we're looking at the CMDB, we are kind of coming to a point where we're saying, you know what, we have to identify and inventory what we have in the infrastructure. Okay, and we have to populate the CMDB because that's the repository that we have on the platform. And we might bring application performance tools, the DevOps, the infrastructure, and we want to kind of harmonize and identify and reconcile all the entries so that we know what we're talking about. And we want the relationships amongst them so that we have the dependencies established. But it really cuts across all different functional areas in the organization. So, we talk about the ITSM, where incident, problem, change, all have the CIs bound to them. So incident happens to a certain CI, change happens to a certain CI, problems are associated with the CIs. But we also have ITOM, IT operations management. We have IT asset management. All of that connected extreme right platform, we allow our customers to build their own apps on the platform, but they can use the CMDB as well because it's a core platform capability, right? So we have this thing available, but then we come to this point where we're saying, okay, what comes first?
Well, Arun, so some might say that the IT asset management has to come first because I have to have all my assets kind of in place and to be able to populate the configuration management database. And without that, I don't know what I have. Plus, by the way, I talked about that security risk before. I would think that you would want to know what IT assets you have, and especially what you're putting on those assets right from the start. So you want to track it from the day you buy it to the day it's gone so that you can reduce that security risk.
Yeah, so I'm going to take the CMDB side, but before I do that, I just want to take a sidebar. some of these light-hearted graphics that you see here, thanks to Marcel's daughter who drew us these nice graphics, and you'll see the theme kind of following through wherever appropriate. So this is pretty cool. It always brings a smile to my face. But
shout out to Nicole.
Shout out to her. But the CMDB, playing the role of the operational side. So I want to kind of introduce a whole new thought here, saying, you know what, we don't have to be so swim lane driven, saying ITSM and the CMDB or ITAM and the asset management. ServiceNow provides applications for both, okay? But we have to be cognizant of the fact that from a business perspective, they're not looking at your solutions as ITSM or ITAM or ITOM. They don't care about all of that. They need to know that their business is protected, that their operations are protected, that their assets are protected. And ServiceNow has an enabling functionality. I just want to bring that up here. I will apologize to those who feel like this is a little too technical, and there are going to be a few technical slides here, although we're trying to keep it as much business focused as possible.
Well, Arun, I'm going to stop you before you get too technical.
Yeah.
Are you going down the path here and saying that ServiceNow can actually manage the asset from two different perspectives, like it's a single asset?
So yes, and thank you for bringing me back on track. So the part that I'm talking about here is that ServiceNow asset management is on the platform. ServiceNow CMDB is a core part of the platform, but there is functionality that we have a technical enabler that says we can synchronize the CIs and the assets so that we maintain a consistent view from both the operational as well as the financial perspective. So
if I'm changing out that email server, sorry, Arun, but if I'm changing out that email server, that's going to make it a lot easier, right? Because when you change that email server, you're changing an asset, but you're changing a configuration item as well. So now it makes that process much easier.
And I totally agree with you from a process perspective, from a business perspective. But from a technical perspective, I do want to highlight there are two business rules that manage and maintain that relationship. And when you insert a configuration item through various different processes, whether it's manually, whether it's through imports, whether it's through our discovery process, you can also create an asset into the asset database. But all this is based on the logical mapping. So there is a mapping that you have to go through in terms of the business, and then it will maintain and manage, right? You can get into a place where there are orphan CIs or orphan assets, but I'm just trying to make a technical point here. But from a business perspective, yes, it's possible. To answer your question, Marcel, that yeah, we can take a CI and an asset, associate them, and maintain the consistency for both the perspectives. So this is kind of a key part of our discussion, saying, you thought CMDB or you thought asset, but you can synchronize. Does that answer your question, Marcel?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so this functionality kind of harmonizes the assets and CIs. But let me kind of put it into a different context. And we are talking federal space here. We call this the federal tech talk. Most of our customers and the audience that we have here are all in the federal space. So when we look at this and we talk about the zero trust architecture challenge, what does that really mean? Okay, the CISA model of the maturity, it talks about pillars. It talks about devices and networks and applications and data. All of these, in their sense, are assets. So you and I can talk all kind of geekdom about something being a CI and something being an asset, but in terms of zero trust, and when the CISO looks at it, when the CIO looks at it, when the CTO looks at it, they're all looking at assets they're protecting, and they're protecting against access from the outside, which are the signals that we're talking about, whether it's users, whether it's Internet of Things, whether it is devices, and they're all accessing assets. In their mind, there's physical facilities, there's databases, there's cloud services, there's all kinds of IT infrastructure, and they're trying to protect for that.
Arun, are you saying in your in what you just said that assets that participate in a zero trust environment are actually coming from the two different disciplines, both the cost, risk, and value side and the operational side?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because when we're talking zero trust and we're talking the organization, they are not parsing these specific definitions, right? So we have to address that. And that's where we start looking at this mission criticality driven strategy. And what do I mean by that? So let's look at some of the considerations. The CMDB itself is neither a project nor a process. And it's not like it's implemented once and it's done, because it's going to be an ongoing foundation for the enterprise. The asset management is, we already talked about, very closely tied to the CMDB, because not all CIs are assets and not all assets are CIs, but there is a certain interest that we have across both. Okay, and software asset management has been proven to be a great source for harvesting cost savings. Remember where we started. We said we have to address the operational goals, and we also have to look at cost savings. So we want to kind of get to both, but we cannot do this without the participation and sponsorship of our mission partners. So what is important?
Arun, I want to, you mentioned software asset management there. I want to just take a little sidebar here and tell you, I once had an experience with a big power company here on the East Coast, and they put in a software asset management system, and they looked at utilization in that software asset management, and they paid for their software asset management system in 3 months by recovering assets that weren't being used. So when you started out this presentation day and you talked about some of the challenges people have are the costs, or they perceive as the cost, I think there's a huge benefit on that software asset management side.
Yeah, so I do see some comments in the chat, and there are people already taking sides. But here's where I want to kind of try to bring that into context. Somebody said, how do you bring these assets or the CMDB CIs into the org? So we are not really looking at product and functionality, but there are so many ways you can bring the CIs into the CMDB. You can have discovery, bringing the information in. You can have manual entries. You can have import sets, and you can automatically create an asset when a CI comes in based on.
Wait, stop there. So what you're saying is one discovery tool brings in both sides.
Yeah, I said that without saying it, but yeah.
So why duplicate it, right? Why do them separately? Why do one before the other? Is that what you're saying?
So we have to do it in context, though. So from a technical perspective, we can say as soon as the asset, the CI comes in, there's an asset. But I'm going to switch gears a little, and let me kind of present my case a little bit here. So my prompt here says what is important. And what I kind of posit is that not all systems are important to the same level to the mission. So what I mean by that is that there are certain systems. Let's say you are in the federal government and you run a benefits program, and it's the SNAP program in USDA, or you're running some permits from another organization, or you are DHS and you're running some benefits or the applications for the people coming into the country, or the refugee program. There are so many different programs, and you're running those, and those are your mission critical systems or applications. And then you also have the backend systems where you have somebody running timesheets or some other social applications. And if you don't separate them, if you don't give them the level of importance, you're going to treat them all alike. So my position is that let's identify what is more important to your organization. And how do you decide that? There are different criteria, and I've just listed a few here. Is it the number of users? Is it the data that you are storing and protecting in terms of PHI, PII, some other mission sensitive data? Or is it the service level agreements that say that you have to have something available in a short turnaround time, otherwise some needy family is going to go hungry? You have to think of that context. And that context is going to allow you to tier the systems. So you are going to say, let me identify my mission critical systems. And let's tier those and say tier 1 is this X amount. And I just picked a number 10 here, saying 10 critical systems. And I'm going to populate the CIs and hence the assets for those systems, but end to end. So make sure that there is coverage end to end, everything that needs to keep that system operational and financially viable is all available in that relationship. And
Arun, I gotta say, I'm listening to what you're saying here, and I'm thinking to myself, look, put aside whether IT asset management or CMDB comes first. If somebody goes, there's a lot of people out there that say, hey, I'm going to build my CMDB, so I'm going to do servers first, then I'll do routers next. What I'm hearing is something different here. You're saying that's not the right way to do it.
Yeah, so I think, I got a little passionate about my approach, and I think you kind of caught me there. So I do agree that you cannot start with all servers, because if I go and give an assignment to a group that's handling servers and say, populate the CMDB for all the servers, they're going to make that their mission, and they're going to just populate all the servers. And they're going to populate all servers without any context, without any logic, without any relationship to what is important to the mission. And same with the network and others. I'm saying, let's not do that. Let's make everybody aware. And that's where I talk about the people, the processes, the technologies, everything in the organization to make sure that those top tier systems are fully provided for, and we address those and we exercise our organization with those people, process, and technologies.
That means then what you're saying is that you have to build out a common service data model, really, you should, before you start populating that infrastructure in the CMDB.
If people didn't know it, they would say you're a plant. That's where I'm going next. But when we're talking about operational and tactical dashboards, that's good, because that's kind of presenting the data. But yes, we want to start with tier 1. We want to look at everything. And how do you do that? Where do you do that? And that's where we're saying start with the common services data model. Okay, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time for some of the people who feel what I'm going to do in the next few slides is a little too technical and geeky, but I just want to
I'm going to keep you in check, though.
Okay, you keep me in check. All right. So the common services data model, this is something we in ServiceNow are converging towards, and it's actually a two-word phrase, right? It says common service data model. So what we are doing is we have so many different solutions on the platform so that all of that works cohesively, and there is a certain lineage and transparency and traceability right through all of what we do on the platform. We have this thing called the common service data model. And I'm going to simplify this. This is just so that it's complete and people know where I'm starting from. But if you look at it more from a data model perspective, we're starting with the capabilities that an organization has and presents to its users, right? And then there's a business application, which is then connected to an application service, which has technical services underneath it. And the technical services then further have other infrastructure items, below that. The reason I kind of present this in this way is to show you that there is a relationship right from the business capability to the actual infrastructure item, and that can be traced right through. And there are different use cases in your organization on the platform that are all going to use and I'm going to let this transition come out here. So this is kind of giving you a full landscape. But what it's doing is, if you look at the middle layer there, which says CMDB, on the left, you see the business capability, and you see the whole linkage right through the infrastructure CIs. And what this is giving you is the capability to capture what is mission critical in certain records within an application inside the CMDB. And that's where it's going to be stored.
So let me summarize this for you, Arun. What you're saying is that identify from the top all of the different missions or businesses that we have right at the very top. And then the technology or applications that support that business, and then down below that, the infrastructure. And that to me sounds like it'd be quite handy for any business owner. And it would also be quite handy for IT to have for on the operational side.
Yeah, so I'll spend a few minutes here saying, we talked about the fact that you want to identify mission critical systems. And our mission critical systems typically expose or offer a certain business capability to the constituents, to the outside world, to the end users. And that's what that is. And it is supported by a business application or a set of business applications underneath that. And these business applications have a certain lineage back to the technical services that are offered underneath it, which depend on infrastructure CI. So,
Arun, I gotta tell you something. You know, I was doing some research about 4 or 5 years ago, and I saw Gartner was predicting in 2022, 2023, they said IT objectives and business objectives would align. And basically what you're explaining right here seems to be what's happening. We're aligning all of the business and IT, and we're presenting it through the CMDB. It's really like Google Maps of your entire infrastructure.
Yeah, so I'm going to say yes, but I'm also going to say that, you know, a lot of what we're talking about here is not flip of a switch. It's not something that is going to happen overnight, right? And it is something that we have to get our mission stakeholders together and have them see this big perspective. I don't think we should, although we kind of keep using the words and terminology saying business and IT, I think business and IT is the same thing, because the IT is only the enabler for the business. So we have to kind of change the way we look at these things, and we have to address it like that, because once the business is able to express what they need, or the business or the mission, and the enabling technology is able to kind of capture that, you know, and you know, again, apologies to those who are non-technical and who are more from the mission side, but I just kind of communicating that this is how all of this is stored inside the CMDB. There are relationships, there's the CSDM tables, etc. But what it allows is the business and the mission and the IT to get a full view of how the mission critical systems are actually implemented and how their dependencies flow down and right down to the lowest level CIs. And
you know what I see as a benefit of this, Arun? Think about this. A router goes down and I can't get to email. And a lot of people can't get to email. So hundreds of support incidents start opening up. I can't get to email. I can't get to email. And now, if I don't have something like this in place, I'm probably going to start with my email server, when all along it's a router. So I see the benefit of this is me not only getting to a root cause really quickly, but being able to consolidate all of those incidents that have just been opened up based on that router issue.
yeah, so I'm going to kind of, since you kind of brought that up, I'm going to take it to a different discussion, or a kind of next level of the discussion. So what you would do is, you know, I started with this question: when there is an outage in your environment, do you consult your CMDB? That's on the back end. But when there is an outage in your organization, are you able to disseminate that information on a portal saying your system is down? And all this is possible only if you have this whole lineage established and the relationships established and the dependencies established. And if you put it on your portal, somebody who's coming in to report that something is down already sees that, and you're automatically deflecting incidents.
You know, we had a power outage last week. In fact, I had a leak in my roof from that thing. But you know, when I called the power company, they said, we are aware of an outage in your area, and they told me the estimated time it would be fixed. So you're kind of telling me that that's what it does, an impact level.
Yeah, so that's one of the benefits of this. The fact that you can see upstream and downstream wherever you start. So if you say email server and you go look up who are the people or what are the systems that are affected or impacted by this email server. You can see that. And what is the email server running on? Is it here? Is it outside? Is it Office 365? It doesn't have to be owned by us. Remember, we said CMDB is not always owned by us. It could be anywhere in the data center or in the ecosystem, but you know it and you know who to call, you know what to do. And a lot of times, you and I have been on these bridges where there are 40 people on the call and saying, oh, this system is down, and everybody is kind of scattering around trying to find where the problem is. Once they find a problem, it takes only like 5 minutes to fix it, but finding it is a problem, and the CMDB is going to help you on that. Right. I do want to address a couple of the questions that came up in chat. Somebody wanted my background. It says,
that
virtual
go, yeah.
I can do that. But I see Renee, and Renee says, love it, curious how you can clean up the CMDB with this in mind once you've already populated having data quality issues. Pierre Bowery says, echo Renee. So I think if you are in a place where you have the CMDB populated or the assets populated, you're already in level 2 or level 3 of this discussion, because you already brought these things in. And there is no doubt that there are situations where you will land where you have orphan CIs, where the CI exists, but there is no associated asset. Or you will land into the orphan assets where you have assets, they don't have associated CIs. This is a very practical situation because the CIs come in through discovery, and assets either are auto-created if we do the mapping and we do the insertion of the asset based on the CI. But if you have assets that are brought in from procurement, because that's where assets get procured, invoicing comes in, you're receiving it, and it's now in your asset, but you don't have the associated CI. So you can definitely run queries to resolve that, right? And kind of clean up that. In terms of the data quality, I think that was one of the questions that somebody had about, data quality. Somebody said, how does anyone out there populate and manage service to service relationships? So the fact that you brought in the CI, but you don't have an associated asset, or you have lost the connection to that, you can definitely run queries. And we have this thing called the data certification module on the CMDB, where you can run the you can have this whole data certification setup and send out tasks to certain owners of the certain classes of the CIs so that they can inspect the data and they can resolve this as tasks there. So don't think that this is just querying and reporting on it, but there is a follow through and follow up of it where you take a look at the data certification module and you assign tasks to people so they can remediate, but not only that, they can actually periodically certify that the data is good. There is nothing worse than having a CMDB that you depend on, but it's not accurate. So you got to kind of take that into mind when you're setting this up, right? I hope I'm answering some of your questions. As is obvious, there's a lot more discussion that we need to kind of get into around these. And Saji says, I agree with your own defining the tier level is critical. I will recommend those criticality levels should be a part of standard policy of an organization or should be approved and published. I do know Saji professionally and personally, and he's done a lot of good work around the ITSM area. So I value that contribution. So tiering of the applications and mission critical systems is definitely important. Data certification model is out of the box. I think, yes, don't quote me on it. I'm not a license guy. I'm not a product guy. I'm more of a solutions guy, but we can find out the answer. If you want to send me an email, we can definitely provide that. Marcel or I can provide that. And John Fraser, hello. Thank you from the Veterans Affairs. I see. Thank you for participating in this. And Marissa, he says, yes, our teams are doing exactly that. Thank you for that validation. I'm really happy with the level of engagement on this chat, and I appreciate that. I know we are going to be running out of time soon, so we talked a lot about CMDB, but I want, what we set out to do in this session is to try to kind of bring a happy medium, a common ground, a way to address both CMDB and assets. And I'm going to just quickly go through some of the things that we have in terms of a cost-saving approach. So we talked a lot about CMDB and the operational goals we have, but there's also the asset management side where we can get some quick benefits from this. So value realization, and especially we go to the cloud, we are implementing a lot of software. There's a lot of challenges that we have around this. We have a lot of the disconnected tools. We have cost visibility that's not evident in most of what we do, and we always are in trial drills and we are reacting to things. So assets get lost. We don't know who has what. And a lot of these manual processes, and we're depending on heroes in our organization, and I think we can avoid that. So here's a laundry list of things we can get outcomes quickly from, right? In terms of reducing cost, in terms of reducing risk, in terms of improving efficiencies, and we have various different options. And as you can see, the theme of what we are talking about mostly here is that let's not try to boil the ocean. Let's not try to do, just because our product and our platform provides all this functionality doesn't mean that you can take advantage of everything on day one. And it's not, there is a certain participation from the organization that is required. So that's where we are saying, let's look at software asset management. Hey, Marcel, you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, there's definitely a cost savings, and I talked about it before. You can look at the usage. I think that's just such a key. And then and there was some stats that, I've looked at over the years of the cost savings just from that. There's so many people that over purchase on their licenses, and then they underutilize those licenses. So when you have an asset management system in place and you're tracking your software assets, you can track your spending. You can automatically track your demand through employee self-service requests. You can identify overlaps. And it's funny because we were talking about discovery today. I've worked with several service management products, and usually the CMDB just comes with ITSM. What people charge for generally is discovery. And that seems to me it would be an overlap if you try to do both disciplines separately. So yeah, you can identify overlaps when you have a software asset management system in place. You can also use it to detect vulnerabilities. When things go out of service, I had a customer once that when we did a discovery on the network, their email server was out of compliance and they weren't getting any updates. And they also had older versions of software. Just because you have a version, let's say, of Adobe today that's fine, it doesn't mean it's fine in 6 months from now. Sometimes there's vulnerability in the applications that you have. And so if you're tracking those, you can make sure that they're up to date. And by scanning or keeping up to date on what's on the machines, you can verify that you are in compliance and that you don't have any vulnerabilities on the network. And also with software asset management, a lot of organizations overpurchase by an average of 10 to 20% because they're deathly afraid of audits. And so with the service catalog, you can not only with asset management track all the systems, but the service catalog, you can divvy out licenses and keep track of who has licenses so that you don't go over your license counts, or at the same time, you can keep track so that you're not underutilizing it, the assets as well.
Hey, I do want to talk about the benefits of software asset management, but I see Pierre Bory asking a question, and I think we can have a little discussion, and maybe we can follow up after this session as well. Saying this conversation makes an assumption that asset management and CMDB are or will be set up in ServiceNow. Says, can you talk about impacts of value of CMDB without asset management being set up in ServiceNow, but imported from another system? I'm going to make some assumptions here, Pierre, and I'm going to also answer your question, hopefully. So in the whole platform, the way we look at it, right? We always think that, yeah, we are a little partial to having everything on the platform, but it doesn't preclude us from having something outside the platform. And that I say that because we have these strong integrations to things that are outside the platform. Right? And when we talk about automation engine and the integration hub and the spokes we have for the systems of record that are not inside of ServiceNow. And it's very common, whether it is the Workday or the Oracle HCM for HR, or whether it is the financials or the SAP or various things. I would treat the CMDB that is not implemented inside ServiceNow like one of those systems of record. First of all, let me pause here and ask if that is a reasonable way of looking at it. Pierre, if you want to chat on the put on the chat, and because I'm actually responding to your question directly, because I think this is
Yes, that makes sense, he says.
Okay, thank you, Pierre. So when you look at it like that, we have different strategies for integrating, right? So one of the ways we look at integrating with anything outside of ServiceNow is we say, does the data need to be inside ServiceNow? Is there benefit, right? And this is more of a solutioning kind of a discussion, but I think the audience here will benefit from this. That's why I'm kind of going in this direction. So we can bring all the data in, but that would mean redundant data. So I'm assuming that you don't want to do that because you already have a mature CMDB somewhere else. So the next option becomes, let's use the data where it is relevant for the process in the stage, in the whole workflow. How would we do that? Is by integrating using REST APIs with a JSON payload and bring the data where it's reasonable and needed for that particular situation. And we have various different solutions, from remote processing to looking at it as tables outside of ServiceNow versus just using a on-demand REST API. So there are different strategies to use it where needed functionally. And so I'm not saying that this is required to be inside the ServiceNow platform, but one of the big advantages you have having it inside the platform is you're not looking at only those point solutions. So for example, if you have a CMDB that's outside, or if you have an asset that's outside, and you have these 15 different processes that are all making these point connections to refer to the data outside of CMDB, to the outside CMDB, then you're incurring that overhead of making all those integrations. On the other hand, if it was inside, when it's inside the platform, we don't even call it integration. We're just referring to that data inside of the platform. So that's how, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you an answer one way or the other, but I'm just giving you the pros and cons and seeing how it could probably facilitate. Pause. Pierre, did I answer? Thank you very much.
Great explanation.
Thank you, Pierre. Yeah, because these are the things why we do these presentations, because, and Marissa said, in addition to bringing the data into the CMDB, I'd also to leverage the right ServiceNow product to help them, such as APM for application portfolio management, which adds logic to the data. CMDB is a database of data. It matters when we apply logic, such as other product areas do, such as APM. Very well said, Marissa. And I think the whole CSDM conversation we started was to bring all that into context, because when you get into CSDM, whether it is strategic portfolio management in PPM or project portfolio management, or APM in application portfolio management, or the digital products planning, all of that is using that same model, and you're now able to cohesively manage your organization.
Arun, let's as we start to wrap up here, let's just go back to that question we asked. What comes first, CMDB or ITAM? why don't you summarize what our conclusion is?
Yeah, so I will do that. And we talked enough about SAM. So I'm going to say, here's the way I look at it, right? I don't think that we have to make a binary choice, because we can achieve both, but it has to be in context. And the context has to be that it is mission-driven prioritization. And what I mean by that, and I think some of the people on the in the audience kind of validated that, saying you have to tier the systems. You have to start with the mission criticality. Should I bring up a timesheet system first, or should I bring up the the e-permit system, or the things that is of more importance to the organization, whether it is service to the citizen, or whether it's revenue producing, or whether it's something that keeps the SLAs in place. So you start with the tier one, and then you iterate. I don't know what tier one means for all of you in the organization, but each one of you has a tier one that is either 7 systems or 10 systems or 15 that it's a manageable number. Use that, and then use the synchronization of the CMDB and asset. Again, if you bring in CMDB through discovery, the CIs using discovery, you're going to get a whole lot of CIs, and it's not in context. But if it is in context of the mission critical systems used by the mission critical systems, you're going to focus on what is important to you and the associated assets with that. And when you look at the cost savings that we are talking about, so we cannot just say, oh, operationally, we have addressed the goals. We have to also, we have to stay in business. And when I say we, I mean us as in the federal agency. We're going for budgets. We want to show that we are implementing things that are bringing us value, and we are going to show to our leadership, show to our teams that we are benefiting from implementing solutions on the platform. And software asset management is a great way of doing it. Don't try to do everything. Pick 2 publishers. Maybe you have Microsoft Visio that you're providing to people who are always not using it, and then or they have one use and they're done, or maybe it's Adobe, or maybe it's Oracle. I don't know. Whichever is your most important publisher, use that to harvest the cost saving, and your solution is going to pay for itself, and you can exhibit that to your leadership to go back and iterate to do more of the same solution. And in the meanwhile, you have exercised your people, your process, your technologies, because remember, it's the whole organization that's going to be affected by it. And that's where I think it's important to kind of take a breadth first view rather than a depth first, where I think, Marcel, you said, shall we do all servers? Yeah, do all servers, and then what? No. Let's start from top down, start from the business, and then, close out on that.
What you're really doing at the end of the day is you're providing a real intelligence around every asset in the organization. You know why you have it and what it's doing, and you're able to really apply your business rules and your change management processes to that asset. And yeah, I think the multi-pronged approach and focusing on a mission is critical. And I love that we kind of came to that conclusion as we debated this.
Yeah, I know there was not going to be a yes or no or a binary answer, but I think there is a very practical and logical and a mission criticality driven way to do this thing. So thank you, everybody, for being a part of this hour with us. And hopefully this has been informative. We have enjoyed it. And I love the interaction on the chat. So we're going to throw it open for a few questions if there, and back to Heather.
Thanks, Arun. Like you mentioned, we are going to open up the floor for questions. So if you have any, feel free to throw them in the chat or the Q&A pod. We do have one in the Q&A pod. It is, can either CMDB or asset management be implemented without implementing the other? If yes, what are the consequences?
Hey, Marcel, do you want to take this one?
Well, it's kind of reversed. It's kind of a reverse way of what we've been looking at. But really, there's a cost, risk, and financial consequence if you don't do asset management. And there's an operational consequence if you don't do configuration management. The risk of not tracking your assets throughout their entire life cycle, the biggest one to me is there's a security risk. You have to track them. How many people have laptops at home? Open your drawer if you know, and look and see if you have an old BlackBerry in there. Why wasn't that BlackBerry returned? I've run into a lot of customers who have a BlackBerry in their drawer, believe it or not, or old devices that the organization should have. So there's a consequence of not doing asset management. But at the same time, how does somebody run their business from an operational side and really not know what the infrastructure is that supports it, all the way up to the top of who owns that business and who are all the SMEs involved and what's the impact levels of that service that you're providing. So there's a consequence of not having the configuration management set up. So a multi-pronged approach by focusing on a mission, a critical mission first, without trying to boil the ocean, makes absolute sense to me.
Hey, Marcel, I think you sent some people on a time warp when you said BlackBerry. I think some of the people on the call
they're like, what's that?
might think it's some frozen yogurt place, which happens to think so just on the lighter side. Hey, but I think let's see if there's any other questions, Heather.
I don't see any other questions, so I think if you guys want to go ahead and wrap up, we'll be all set.
Thank you very much, everybody on the call, and this has been a really good. Hopefully, we have given you a perspective, and you know, and I definitely like all the contributions people have made over the chat. And thank you very much, Marcel. I'll let you close it out.
Yeah, I would like to thank everybody as well. This has been a great session for me as well. Just working with Arun here and his knowledge on the configuration management database is amazing. I'll finish off by saying I've worked with competitors. I competed against ServiceNow. This platform is absolutely amazing. It's a gold mine, and it's the future. It's a platform in the cloud. I think that there's so much that can be done with it, and the configuration management database is such a center point of all of it.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, guys. We hope you all, we hope the information you received during this webinar was helpful. If you have any further questions or would like to request more information, please feel free to reach out. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, this meeting was recorded and it will be emailed to you most likely by tomorrow. So yeah, thank you again and have a great day, everyone.